At 3 a.m., the piercing wail of a baby echoed through the mansion, just moments after Tamsin was handed her pink slip. The millionaire's heartlessness left her stranded, but fate twisted as she raced back, broom in hand, to find the infant choking on a toy. With a swift, desperate sweep, she cleared the airway, saving the child's life just as the clock struck 3:15. In that harrowing instant, she discovered her worth far surpassed that of any salary. "My name is Tamsin. I am not just a maid. I am a guardian in the shadows." As I knelt beside Leo, my heart raced with a mix of relief and adrenaline. The baby's tiny body trembled, still recovering from the ordeal, and I felt a deep sense of protectiveness wash over me. I had been an outsider in this grand mansion, but in that moment, I was more than just a maid. I was a lifeline for the family I had served. The sound of rushing footsteps echoed through the hall as Gregory and Eleanor burst into the nursery, their faces etched with worry and disbelief. Eleanor was the first to reach us, her eyes wide with a blend of gratitude and fear. "Tamsin, you saved him!" she exclaimed, her voice cracking slightly as she gathered Leo into her arms. I could see the relief flood her features, and for a brief moment, the overwhelming weight of her stress seemed to lift. Gregory stood frozen in the doorway, his expression a mix of shock and realization. His pride, which had fueled so much of his behavior towards me, began to falter in the face of what had just happened. "Thank you," he finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper, and I could see the turmoil in his eyes. It was a statement filled with layers of meaning, a recognition of my value that had previously gone unspoken. I had spent countless hours cleaning, organizing, and caring for their home and family, often feeling invisible in my role. But now, in this moment of crisis, my actions had spoken louder than any words of gratitude could. "I just did what needed to be done," I replied softly, still trying to catch my breath. The reality of the situation began to settle in. I had acted on instinct, fueled by my love for the child and the bond I felt with this family. I glanced at Leo, who was nestled safely against Eleanor, and felt a surge of maternal warmth I never expected to experience. It was as if I had crossed an invisible line, stepping into a space where love and duty intertwined. As Eleanor cradled Leo, I could see the tension in her shoulders begin to ease. Gregory approached, his usual confident demeanor replaced by a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. I didn't realize how much you meant to us, Tamsin," he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "I've been so focused on my business, on maintaining appearances, that I lost sight of what really matters." His admission hung in the air, heavy and raw. "Leo is the most important thing to you, and to all of us," I replied, searching his eyes for understanding. "Family is not defined by wealth or status. It's the bonds we create, the love we share." My words felt like a bridge, connecting the past with the future I hoped we could build together. I had always felt like an outsider, but perhaps there was a chance to redefine those boundaries. Eleanor, still holding Leo close, nodded vigorously. "You're absolutely right. I often feel overwhelmed, trying to keep everything together, but I can see now how essential you are to our family." Her voice was firm yet tender, reflecting a newfound determination. In that moment, I knew I had touched something deep within her, a realization that our roles could be intertwined in ways we had never considered. As the minutes passed, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The panic that had filled the air dissipated, replaced by a sense of unity and understanding. I realized that I had not just saved Leo's life, I had opened a door to a deeper connection with the family I had devoted myself to. Gregory, usually so guarded, seemed to be shedding his layers of pride, revealing a man who was simply a father, terrified of losing his child. "I want to make this right," he said, his voice steadying. "You deserve more than what I've given you. I've overlooked your contributions, and I was wrong. You deserve respect and recognition for everything you do." His sincerity caught me off guard. It was a dramatic shift from the cold dismissal I had faced earlier, and I felt a rush of warmth at the prospect of being truly seen for the first time. "Thank you, Gregory," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. "But I'm not in this for recognition. I'm here for Leo." A smile broke through my tears as I looked at the sleeping baby in Eleanor's arms. As long as he's safe and loved, I'm where I need to be. My heart swelled with the realization that love had always been my true motivation. The material world and its hierarchies seemed insignificant compared to the joy of being part of this family's journey. Eleanor stepped closer to me, her eyes glistening with gratitude. "Tamsin, you are part of our family now, whether we acknowledged it or not. You have been a constant source of strength, and I can't imagine navigating this without you." Her words brought a sense of belonging that I had longed for, and I felt a shift in the dynamic between us all. In that moment, I realized that the path ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges as we navigated our newly defined relationships, but I was ready to embrace the complexities. I had fought through hardship to protect Leo, and now I would stand alongside this family as they learn to value one another beyond their social standings. Together, we could forge a future rooted in love, trust, and respect, where every member, no matter their role, felt valued. As I looked around the room, I felt hope blooming within me. A new chapter was unfolding, and I was determined to be part of its story. I had come to this mansion as a maid, but I would leave having found a family, one that would always hold a special place in my heart. Rushing through the grand entrance of the mansion, I felt a wave of anxiety surge through me as I scanned the foyer. The opulence of the place, once a source of pride and comfort, now felt suffocating. I had left my position in search of dignity, yet here I was again, fueled by a primal instinct to save baby Leo. The sound of frantic footsteps echoed down the hall, and I could see Eleanor standing outside the nursery, her face pale and panic-stricken. "Leo!" she cried, desperation lacing her voice. I rushed to her side, heart racing, pushing aside the hurt of my dismissal from their lives. This was not about me. This was about the tiny life that hung in the balance. I could hear the faint whimpers coming from the nursery. I peered inside to see Leo lying in his crib, his little body trembling. It was as if time had slowed. The world outside the room faded away, leaving only the urgency of the moment. "Eleanor, what happened?" I asked, my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. She looked at me, her eyes wide with fear, but before she could respond, I noticed the baby's breathing was shallow. Instinctively, I moved closer, feeling the weight of the situation settle heavily on my shoulders. I remembered the first aid lessons I had learned during my time here and seized upon that knowledge. "He was fine, Tamsin. I just turned my back for a moment," Eleanor exclaimed, her voice trembling as she wrung her hands together, fighting against the tide of guilt that was threatening to overwhelm her. I could see that she was caught between sheer terror and maternal instinct, ready to do anything to save her son. "Stay calm. I'll take care of him," I said, trying to offer comfort as I stepped into the room, the air thick with an almost tangible fear. I placed my hand on the edge of the crib, feeling Leo's warmth. His little fingers clutched the blanket, and I knew I had to act quickly. I gently lifted him from the crib, cradling him against my chest, and felt his tiny body trembling against mine. "Call for help, Eleanor. I'll keep him warm," I instructed, knowing that my words were both a command and a reassurance. She nodded and rushed toward the phone, her earlier panic giving way to determination. I could hear her voice as she dialed emergency services, her tone shifting from fear to focus. Holding Leo tightly, I began to rock him softly, my heartbeat staying both of us. I whispered soothing words, the kind I had often used during his fussy moments. "You're going to be okay, little one. Just breathe, sweetheart." His eyes flickered open for a moment, and I could see the confusion and fear mirrored in their depths. I felt a deep connection, one that transcended the boundaries of our roles in the household. As Eleanor spoke urgently on the phone, I felt an overwhelming surge of protective instinct. This baby was part of the family I had grown to love, despite the barriers between us. I had always seen him as more than just the son of my employers. He was a cherished soul, a bundle of joy in a world that often felt heavy with adult concerns. "Please hurry," Eleanor pleaded with the operator, her voice rising in pitch. I could sense her anxiety rising again, threatening to overwhelm her. I carefully adjusted Leo in my arms, mindful of his delicate state, and began humming a gentle lullaby, the same one that often lulled him to sleep. In that moment, I felt a spark of hope ignite within me. The bond that had formed between us, the countless evenings spent caring for him, had made me more than just a maid. I was his protector, and I would not let fear take hold. As I continued to rock Leo, I glanced at Eleanor, who was pacing anxiously by the door. "They're on their way," she said, a mixture of relief and lingering panic in her voice. I nodded, willing myself to stay strong. The sound of sirens in the distance grew louder, piercing the tension in the air. Suddenly, Gregory appeared at the entrance, his usually confident demeanor replaced by raw concern. "What's happening?" he demanded, eyes darting from Eleanor to me and then to the baby in my arms. "Leo needs help," I replied, my voice steady despite the emotions swirling within me. "We're waiting for the paramedics." His expression shifted from confusion to realization, and I could see the weight of pride melting away. In that moment, he was not just a wealthy businessman, but a father, terrified for his child. I watched as he stepped closer, his eyes locking onto the tiny face of his son, now pale and fragile. He began, his voice trailing off as he reached out a trembling hand toward Leo. "He's fighting, Gregory," I reassured him, feeling the connection between us deepen. "He just needs a little help." The sirens wailed louder, and I felt a rush of determination surge through me. This was the moment I had hoped for, the moment where love broke down barriers. I realized I was not just a maid. I was part of their family, intricately woven into their lives and struggles. As the paramedics burst through the door, the atmosphere shifted yet again, a team of professionals ready to take over. I gently passed Leo into their capable hands, feeling a bittersweet mixture of relief and anxiety wash over me. I had done all I could, but now it was time for the experts to step in. Eleanor and Gregory stood by my side, their eyes glued to the paramedics as they worked with swift precision. In the quiet aftermath of the chaos, I felt a warmth spreading through me. Perhaps my place in this family had not been erased after all. Maybe it had only been waiting for a moment like this to reveal its true significance. As they loaded Leo onto a stretcher, I caught Gregory's gaze, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of humility and gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you, Tamsin," he said, his voice breaking slightly. I nodded, still reeling from the whirlwind of events. "We're a family," I replied, hoping he understood the depth of my words. In that instant, our roles shifted, creating a new narrative woven with love and sacrifice. As I stepped back, I knew this would be a turning point for all of us, a chance to heal, learn, and appreciate the bonds that unite us. In that moment, beneath the weight of uncertainty, I saw the flickering light of hope, illuminating a path forward for us all. If you enjoyed this unfolding tale of resilience and connection, consider subscribing for more chapters that delve deeper into the lives of Tamsin and the family she holds dear. As I dashed back toward the mansion, the pounding of my heart echoed in my ears, a frantic drumbeat urging me onward. The late afternoon sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the manicured lawn. But all I could think about was Leo's fragile state. I could almost hear Eleanor's voice trembling in fear, pleading for help that I was desperate to provide. In my mind, I replayed the frantic moments before I left. The baby's cry piercing through the air like a knife, the panic on Eleanor's face as she cradled her son, desperately trying to soothe him. Even as I felt the weight of my dismissal pressing against my chest, I knew that my loyalty to that family outweighed my own hurt. Reaching the grand entrance of the mansion, I could see the emergency vehicle already parked outside. The flashing lights painted the facade in a surreal glow, a chaotic blend of red and blue that felt both ominous and reassuring. I threw open the door, startling the paramedics who were preparing to enter. They paused, momentarily taken aback by my presence, but the urgency in my voice propelled me forward. "I know what to do. I can help," I gasped, feeling the adrenaline course through me. Gregory emerged from the living room, his face pale and eyes wide with worry. "Tamsin, what are you doing here?" he barked, his voice laced with confusion and disbelief. The last thing I wanted was to reignite the tension between us, but there was no time for niceties. "Leo needs all of us right now," I replied, my determination overriding my concern for his reaction. "Let me show you where he is." Without waiting for permission, I led the paramedics to the nursery. The room was filled with an air of desperation, Eleanor's soft sobs breaking the silence as she cradled Leo against her chest. He was so tiny, so fragile. His breaths came in quick, shallow gasps, and my heart twisted painfully at the sight. Eleanor looked up, her eyes red-rimmed and filled with fear, and I could see the exhaustion etched on her face. "Tamsin, I didn't think you'd come back," she said, her voice trembling. "Of course I came back," I replied, moving closer to examine the baby. I noticed the small flutter of his eyelids and the almost imperceptible rise and fall of his chest. The paramedics rushed into action, asking Eleanor a series of questions while gently taking Leo from her arms. I stepped back, my heart pounding in my throat as I watched them work, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had to do something more. As the team assessed Leo's condition, I glanced at Gregory, who stood frozen by the doorway, the lines of worry etched deep across his forehead. He had always been a man of power and control, yet in this moment, he seemed to be stripped of both. I felt a surge of empathy for him, realizing that sometimes pride can be a heavy burden to bear, especially when one's child is in jeopardy. I wanted to tell him that it was okay to feel vulnerable, that love often requires us to shed our armor, but the words caught in my throat. Minutes felt like hours as the paramedics worked, and I could see Gregory's hands clenching into fists at his sides. He was a man used to solving problems with money and influence, yet now, standing helplessly, he was faced with an enemy that could not be fought. I turned to him, my heart aching to bridge the gap that had formed between us. "You need to let them do their job," I urged softly. "They know what to do." He took a deep breath, visibly trying to rein in his emotions. It was as though my words reached him through the fog of panic, grounding him just enough to focus. The paramedics continued to talk calmly among themselves, and I caught snippets of their instructions, a language of urgency that was all too familiar to me after years of tending to the family's needs. I knew how to read between the lines, to sense when the situation was critical. After what felt like an eternity, Leo was stabilized, a small oxygen mask placed carefully over his nose and mouth. Relief washed over me, but I knew it was only a temporary reprieve. The paramedics exchanged quick glances, and one of them approached Eleanor, speaking in a low voice. "We're taking him to the hospital," she said, a heavy tone filling the air, and Eleanor's eyes widened with fear once again. I stepped closer, determined to help in any way I could. "I can drive you," I offered, the words spilling out before I had the chance to think. Eleanor looked at me, a mixture of gratitude and disbelief dancing in her eyes. "You don't have to do that," she whispered, but I could see that she was grateful, and I didn't hesitate. This was my moment to show them my unwavering dedication. "No, I want to," I insisted, the conviction strengthening my voice. Gregory moved to Eleanor's side, a protective hand resting on her shoulder. Together, we watched as the paramedics prepared to transport Leo, and I felt a sense of unity forming between us. In that moment, the barriers of pride and resentment began to dissolve. We were not just a wealthy family and a maid. We were a community facing a crisis. And I would do anything for them, especially for Leo. As we rushed to the car, the urgency of the situation enveloped us, and I could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on my shoulders. I glanced at Gregory, seeing a flicker of something new in his eyes. Perhaps it was gratitude, or maybe a recognition of the bond we were forging through this harrowing experience. Whatever it was, I hoped it would pave the way for healing, not just for Leo, but for all of us. We climbed into the car, Eleanor's hand trembling as she held Leo close, and I could sense the shift in the atmosphere. As I started the engine and drove toward the hospital, I realized that this moment, born from chaos and fear, could be the catalyst for something greater, a chance for all of us to redefine what it meant to be a family, and perhaps to find solace in our shared humanity. The streets blurred past us as I drove, urgency propelling me forward. I could feel Eleanor's worry radiating from the back seat, the muffled cries of Leo echoing in my ears like a haunting melody that refused to fade. Every bump in the road jolted my heart, and with each passing second, I was reminded of how fragile life could be. Leo, just a baby, was navigating a world filled with uncertainty, and all I could think about was how to get him the help he desperately needed. Eleanor clutched Leo tighter, her voice shaking as she whispered soothing words to him, though it was clear to me she was as terrified as I was. The moment we approached the hospital, I could see the neon lights illuminating the entrance like a beacon of hope. My hands were clammy on the steering wheel as I parked and rushed around to the back seat, my heart racing. I opened the door and helped Eleanor out, her legs trembling as she took her first shaky step onto the pavement. I could only imagine the turmoil that brewed inside her. The love for her son was palpable, and I was struck by the intensity of her desperation. As we hurried through the sliding glass doors, I could feel the sterile scent of antiseptic filling my lungs, reminding me that we were stepping into a place of uncertainty. The chaos inside was overwhelming. Nurses bustled around, doctors shouted instructions, and the sound of distant machines beeped in rapid succession. Eleanor clutched Leo close, her eyes wide with fear, searching for answers in the hustle. "We need help," I called out to a nurse, my voice cutting through the noise, but it felt lost in the whirlwind of activity. A nurse rushed over, her expression shifting from efficiency to compassion as she looked at Eleanor and then at the precious bundle in her arms. "Let me take a look," she said, gently reaching for Leo. I could see the hesitance in Eleanor's eyes, the instinctive protective nature of a mother battling against the need to let the professionals do their job. "It's okay," I reassured her softly. "They'll take care of him." With a nod that seemed to take all her strength, Eleanor relinquished Leo into the nurse's arms. I watched, my heart aching as she retreated, her hands still outstretched, as if trying to cling to her son even in his absence. I stood beside her, feeling utterly helpless. My mind raced through memories of laughter and warmth in the mansion, contrasting sharply with the cold reality we faced in that moment. The nurse hurried away, but not before reassuring us that they would do everything they could. I could see the weight of those words settle heavily on Eleanor's shoulders, and for a moment, the storm in her eyes quelled. Yet the silence that followed was deafening, filled with the unspoken fears that haunted us both. I leaned in closer, whispering words of encouragement, trying to lend her strength. What if something happens? Eleanor's voice cracked, desperation lacing her words. What if we lose him? I took a deep breath, recalling the love and courage I had witnessed in her. "We won't lose him," I promised, trying to project a calm I didn't quite feel. "He's a fighter, just like you." Time felt elastic as we waited, each minute stretching into an eternity. I remembered the night Leo was born, how he had filled the mansion with joy and laughter, the soft coos that melted our hearts. Now, that joy felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the uncertainty that loomed before us. I knew Gregory was somewhere in this whirlwind, likely lost in his own sea of emotions, battling his pride as he confronted the reality of our situation. Suddenly, the nurse returned, her face a mask of professionalism that belied the compassion I hoped lay beneath. "We're stabilizing him," she said, her voice steady.
He needs to stay in observation for a bit, but we're hopeful." My heart swelled with relief, yet a lingering anxiety gnawed at my insides. We weren't out of the woods yet. Eleanor let out a shaky breath, and I could see the tension in her shoulders begin to ease.
"Can we see him?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Of course," the nurse replied, leading us down a long, sterile corridor. Each step felt like a small victory, and I could sense the glimmer of hope returning to Eleanor's eyes. When we reached the door, the nurse gently pushed it open, revealing a small room filled with medical equipment and the soft sound of monitors beeping in rhythmic cadence. As we stepped inside, my heart ached at the sight of Leo, nestled among a tangle of wires and tubes, looking small and vulnerable. Eleanor rushed to his side, her fingers trembling as she brushed a strand of hair from his forehead. "My sweet boy," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. I stood a bit further back, allowing her the space she needed to connect with him, to draw strength from their bond. In that moment, I realized that, despite the chaos that had brought us together, we were united by a love that transcended our roles and responsibilities. I had once been just a maid in a grand house, but now I was part of something greater, something that required courage, sacrifice, and a fierce loyalty to one another. As Eleanor spoke to Leo, pouring all her love into her words, I felt a surge of warmth in my chest. I had done everything I could to save him, and now it was time for the family to rally together, to embrace the chaos and uncertainty. Gregory would have to set aside his pride, and together we would forge a new path for our family, one where love and compassion triumphed over fear. As I steadied myself, leaning against the doorframe of the nursery, I was overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the moment. Eleanor's voice was a balm, soothing Leo, who lay swaddled in his blanket, a tiny warrior fighting for his life. I had been just a maid, but in that instant, I felt an indelible connection to the family I had served for so long. Gregory stood by the door, his brow furrowed, the weight of his pride visibly crumbling as he watched his wife cradle their son. He was no longer just the wealthy businessman, he was a father, terrified and raw, the facade of confidence slipping away. "Eleanor," he finally murmured, his voice cracking, what if we lose him?" The fear in his eyes was palpable, as real as the cold tiles beneath my feet. I stepped forward, unbidden, but driven by an instinct stronger than my usual role. "He won't go anywhere without a fight," I said, my voice firm despite the tremor in my heart. I wanted to tell him that love could outshine fear, that we could weather this storm together, but my words felt inadequate in the face of such dread. Eleanor looked up at me, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "You really think so, Tamsin? You believe he can pull through?" The raw hope in her voice shattered something deep within me. I nodded, swallowing hard. "I do. He's a fighter, just like his parents." I had seen Leo grow, from a fragile newborn to a vibrant little being who lit up the room with his laughter. Even if the odds were stacked against him, I had to believe in his strength and the power of our unity. With every passing moment, I could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. Gregory's shoulders slumped as he stepped deeper into the room, the weight of his earlier actions pressing down on him. "I should have listened to you, Tamsin. I was too proud to see what mattered most." His confession hung in the air, heavy with regret, but it also marked a shift, a potential for healing. I could see that he was ready to break free from the chains of his arrogance, ready to embrace a new humility. Eleanor turned to Gregory, and for a moment their eyes locked, sharing an unspoken understanding. "We need to be strong for him," she whispered, her voice steadying. "For each other." Gregory nodded, and together they approached Leo, their little boy, the source of their shared love and worry. I watched as they touched his tiny fingers, their warmth wrapping around him, a lifeline of hope that transcended the fear that had gripped the room. In that moment, I felt the stirrings of something profound within me. It was as if the boundaries that once defined our relationships were dissolving, replaced by a newfound sense of togetherness. I was no longer just a maid. I was part of this family, woven into its fabric through shared trials and triumphs. I took a step back, allowing them their moment, understanding that my role was shifting too. I had come to their rescue, but now I would help them find their strength. As I grabbed a clean cloth from the nearby changing table, I felt a surge of determination. It was time to take action. I approached Eleanor, my heart racing. "Can I help? Is there anything you need?" She looked at me, her eyes brimming with gratitude. "Just being here is enough, Tamsin. You've already done so much." I smiled softly. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to do. I needed to bolster their spirits, to remind them of the joy that Leo brought into our lives. "Let's tell him a story," I suggested, feeling a spark of inspiration. "Something about brave knights and magical creatures." Eleanor's lips curled into a faint smile, and even Gregory's expression softened. "I used to tell him stories," Eleanor replied, her voice wistful. "He loves those tales." I nodded, hoping that the power of imagination could lift us all, offering a brief respite from the chaos outside. With the faintest hint of hope igniting within, I began to weave a tale of adventure, where knights battled fierce dragons and saved the day. As I spoke, the room transformed. The air was filled with laughter, warmth, and the promise of better days. Gregory joined in, adding his own twists, his voice growing stronger with each line we crafted together. Eleanor's laughter bubbled up, cutting through the heavy atmosphere, igniting a light that had nearly been extinguished. "Leo loves your stories, Tamsin," Gregory said, his eyes sparkling with a newfound appreciation. "He'll remember this." I could see the flicker of joy in Eleanor's eyes as she beamed at us, her heart momentarily lifted from the despair. It was a reminder that even in the darkest times, love and connection could illuminate the path ahead. As I finished my story, I glanced at Leo. His tiny face seemed to relax slightly, as if he too was partaking in our imaginative escape. I felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing that we had created a moment that transcended our fears, one that celebrated the love binding us together. In that small room, I found a new purpose, one that held more weight than my previous title of maid. But just as I was about to let the warmth of our collective joy envelop me entirely, the sudden wail of an ambulance siren pierced through the moment. The sound pulled me back into reality, a stark reminder that time was slipping away. I took a deep breath, knowing we needed to remain steadfast, to face whatever challenges lay ahead. "Let's keep fighting for him," I said, my voice resolute. "Together." Gregory and Eleanor nodded, their hands clasped tightly around Leo, united in their determination to protect their family. As I stood there, enveloped in a profound sense of belonging, I realized this was no longer just about saving Leo. It was about embracing our shared humanity, forging bonds that no amount of wealth could sever. As we prepared for the medical team's arrival, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey we had taken. Through adversity and trial, we had found clarity and connection. I hoped that others, too, could share their stories of love and resilience, for it was in our shared experiences that we could find solace and strength. I wanted to invite others to step forward and share how they had come together in their own times of need, to celebrate the beauty of unity in the face of adversity. In doing so, we might inspire one another, reminding us all that love, in its purest form, can conquer even the greatest challenges. As I stood in the grand foyer, the air thick with tension and uncertainty, I couldn't shake the feeling that the life of little Leo rested heavily on all our shoulders. The commotion from the emergency responders echoed in my ears, but the world around me seemed to fade into a blur. I had been cast aside, my loyalty and devotion disregarded, but instinct propelled me forward. I remembered Leo's tiny fingers wrapping around mine, his laughter filling the hallways like music. That memory fueled my resolve. I wouldn't let pride dictate the outcome of this day.
Gregory's face was a mask of desperation. His usual poise crumbled under the weight of the situation. I could see the inner struggle etched deep within his brow as he paced anxiously. Eleanor hovered nearby, her eyes wide with fear, looking every bit the overwhelmed mother caught in a storm of helplessness. I wanted to reach out, to comfort them both, but my focus remained solely on Leo. I had witnessed Gregory's stubbornness before, but at this moment, it felt like a barrier that could not afford to stand between his family and their son's survival. The paramedics worked rapidly, their shouts of medical jargon blending into a cacophony that filled the room. I could hardly keep up with what they were saying, but every instinct in my being told me that I needed to be part of this. I stepped forward, broom still in hand, attempting to clear the path, ensuring they had the space they needed. Each sweep of the broom felt symbolic. I was cleaning away the despair that threatened to suffocate us all. The polished wood floors gleamed beneath my movements, but my heart felt heavy.
I was determined to clear the emotional debris just as I cleared the physical. "Excuse me, can I help?" I asked, my voice steady despite the chaos. A paramedic glanced at me, surprise flickering in his eyes, but he quickly nodded and gestured for me to stand by. I kept my eyes trained on Leo, who lay on the gurney, surrounded by a flurry of activity. His small, fragile body seemed so vulnerable amidst the bustling professionals, and I felt an overwhelming urge to protect him. I wished for a moment that I could simply pick him up and cradle him against my heart, but that wasn't my role today. Eleanor stepped closer, her hand trembling as she reached out toward Leo. "Is he going to be okay?" Her voice cracked, revealing the deep-seated fear that had taken root inside her. Gregory, usually so composed and commanding, stood frozen, his gaze locked on his son, as if he were afraid to blink in case he might miss something vital. I saw the gears turning in his mind. The struggle of a father grappling with feelings of helplessness and inadequacy. It pained me to see him like this, the man who had built an empire yet felt powerless in the face of his own child's fragility. "Let's focus on keeping things clear," one of the paramedics urged, breaking me from my reverie. I nodded and shifted my position, ensuring I wasn't obstructing their work. The rhythmic beeping of the machines was a constant reminder of the stakes at play. I remembered the countless times I had mopped these floors, the sound of my broom against the wood echoing through the house, each swipe a testament to my dedication. Now, that same broom felt like a bridge to something greater, a lifeline that connected me to this family in their hour of need. As the team continued their tasks, Gregory finally found his voice. "What can we do? Tell us how we can help." The urgency in his tone startled me, a stark contrast to the man who had once dismissed my contributions as a mere maid. He was unearthing a vulnerability I hadn't seen before, and in that moment, the walls of pride he had built around himself began to crack. Eleanor, still standing close to him, reached for his hand, an unspoken agreement between husband and wife, a reaffirmation of their commitment to their son. "Just stay calm," one of the paramedics replied, his demeanor soothing. "We're doing everything we can. We need to stabilize him before we transport him to the hospital." There was a clarity in their instructions that provided a small degree of comfort. I watched as they worked with deft precision, their focus unwavering. Each move they made spoke of training and dedication, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the strength of human resolve. Suddenly, Leo coughed, a small, desperate sound that sent a wave of relief coursing through me, followed by an overwhelming sense of dread. The paramedics exchanged glances, and I took a step closer, instinctively wanting to be near him. "Is he okay?" I whispered, half to myself, half to the team, my heart pounding in rhythm with Leo's labored breaths. "Just a reflex," one of them assured me, but the uncertainty lingered in the air. I felt a tremor of fear ripple through me, accompanied by a flicker of hope. Tamsin, the maid who had once been dismissed, was now a part of something larger, a family in crisis. As they prepared to transport Leo, I watched Gregory and Eleanor gather themselves, their expressions shifting from one of despair to a cautious determination. In that fleeting moment, I saw their love for their child manifest as strength, an unbreakable bond that had the power to overcome obstacles that seemed insurmountable. They were not just wealthy people anymore, they were parents who would do anything to protect their son. The paramedics wheeled Leo away, and I instinctively followed, broom still in hand, feeling as though I had a role to play even now. The world outside the mansion loomed large, and as the door swung open, a rush of fresh air flooded in, mingling with the scent of urgency and uncertainty. I took a deep breath, grounding myself for whatever was to come next. In that moment, amidst the chaos, I knew that love would guide us all, and together we could forge a path through the unknown.